Welcome to Soul Thrive, where we explore spirituality through healing trauma, shadow work, and applying the laws of the universe in order to master ourselves without the fear of the unknown. Hey guys, welcome to another episode on the Soul Thrive podcast. I'm excited to introduce you to our next guest, Tatyanna. Tatyanna, why don't you let our audience know all the lovely things that you do? I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you both so much for having me. So my name is Tatyanna Wright, and I have a podcast called The Conscious Diva, and that's also the name of my Instagram,
Yes.
The Conscious Diva. But what I do is I'm a transformation coach, spiritual transformation coach, and I channel spirit guidance, and it's amazing. I work in a slightly different capacity to perhaps other people that channel energy and spirit guidance. In that the tradition I work in is aligned with the caste Nepali tradition. My teacher is a 27th generation Nepalese shaman, and I was guided to that practice, guided very much to him by our mutual spirit helper called Naga Kanya, who's a half, she has the lower body of a serpent and the upper body of a woman and beautiful eagle wings. And she's got a crown of snakes. And over the course of maybe 6 to 8 months, she guided me through a very cliche saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Right.
But it really was that, because I didn't know anything about caste Nepali, shamanism, and certainly wasn't Googling that on the internet.
Right.
And
Is there anything on Google on that? I'm just curious because I've
No.
never heard of it. I was like,
so yes, at the time when I was well, I used to be a television producer, so I worked in television for decades. I was on a production in India. I was actually filming a series in India, a documentary series about yoga called Yogic Paths that I produced for Gaia TV. So I used to work at Gaia, and I also used to executive produce Open Minds that Regina Meredith hosts. A lot of your audience are probably familiar with,
Yes, of
Regina,
course,
but also Gaia. So I'd been there for a few years, and I was producing this series, and it was on that shoot, this was about 8 years ago, that my guides were really telling me, after this, like when this show wraps, when you're done with post and the series has been delivered, you're done. And a lot of things shifted in my universe. I was in Colorado, where the company's based, where Gaia's based, and then my family, we were moved back to New York, back east, and so a lot of shifts just happened in the universe that literally made that so. And then I was like, okay, this is what this, in quotes, is what I'm to be doing, this spiritual work. I didn't even know what was the spiritual work I was supposed to be doing. What would that look like? I had a very long time meditation practice. I learned to practice TM, Transcendental Meditation, when I was about 13 or 14, because my dad had a TM teacher. This was back in the 80s, and it was very popular then for executives, CEOs of companies to learn TM and then initiate the whole family into it and all of your employees. And so that's how I essentially got exposed to TM. But I had lived in Asia as a child until I was 8. I was living in Bangkok, and then we moved to Sydney, Australia, where I grew up. And I now realize, when I reflect back on that time, that I had always been exposed to spirit, particularly because I was living in a place like Bangkok, where the spirit world is so rich and such a part of everyday life. There's temples everywhere, there's spirit houses everywhere, in tuk-tuks, in taxis, in restaurants, in hotel lobbies, in everybody's garden, in everyone's homes. And so just to experience that from babyhood through to, my childhood was amazing. And I now, as an adult, I can see the connection in the Nagas and how the Nagas were always present in my life, because in iconography, and a lot of Buddhist iconography in Thailand, you will see them on the temples, the snakes. Some of them look like dragons. The beautiful temples that are across Thailand, they have the beautiful like mirrors on them, the little, sort of mirrored mosaic tiles and so on.
Reminds me of Bali too, as you're talking.
Yes.
Yeah, see a lot of that imagery. Yeah.
Very similar. And so that you don't know those things until way later in life.
You don't think about it. It's just like you're surrounded by so much of it, and you have no idea what the symbolism is until finally it's supposed to reveal its wisdom to you and your intuition. I'm so in awe that you listened. You heard the voice, you listened, and you were just like, yeah, I'm ready to move forward into whatever this is. And
Yeah.
you may not know what it looks like, but like then everything starts to click, right? It's like, oh yeah, the symbolisms, the things that I've been immersed in my whole entire life. Now it all makes sense,
Yes.
right? That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Sure.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Thank you. Yeah.
And how did you know that that was spirit talking to you?
Okay, I mean that's a great question. That's something
Mhm.
I often get asked, you know, and explain to
Mhm.
people, my clients. So for me, I just knew.
Right.
So, you know, I knew because and the difference is, it's not your mind, it's not the mind chatter of just telling you that laundry list that you've got to go through, or the whatever, or the self-doubt, or the self-talk, or whatever. It's a very, very different voice and conversation, and it's outside of me, and I hear it as whispers, and it's very clear and direct, and then sometimes I feel it as a whole body reaction, and
Mhm.
then if I'm choosing to ignore, they show me. They
Mhm.
literally show me by an event, something will happen, or I'll be literally shown a vision, like I'm
Mhm.
watching a screen, a cinema screen, and it's that clear. And so then I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm listening
You
to
can't
you.
miss
I'm listening
that.
to you.
No, when it shows up in that direct way, no way. You can't miss that. It's
Yeah,
good that you
yeah.
don't have that self-doubt, right? That comes with a lot of that intuition
Mm,
sometimes, you know. But because you were immersed in so much culture and so much like faith and just being around like spirit, there's an openness there, right? Since you
yeah,
were a kid. And because your dad was also connected with that too. I think that there's this like beautiful energy that's like vibrating from you. I can feel it, which is nice to be around. But yeah, listening to your intuition is hard, I think, for
yeah,
most of us. But when you know and it's there and you can't avoid it, which I think is
yeah.
beautiful.
No, for sure. It's, again, because I was from babyhood to eight living
Yep.
in Asia, it didn't have a traditional upbringing. I had a Thai amma who would take me to an amma's like a nanny, and my parents were living very much an expat lifestyle. So they weren't really present, but I didn't feel alone, or like I didn't have anyone, because I had this amazing carer, and she would take me to temples, and I would just get exposed to things because you just see the monks with their rice bowls on the street.
Right.
And we were just around it, and the understanding from a really young age that spirits. I mean, at the time I didn't know the words because I
Hmm.
was young, but I wasn't living in the West, in a Western environment. Like, it was very open.
Exactly.
I could see spirits. I could talk to my ama about it, things that I was seeing and experiencing that I still remember now as an
Hmm.
adult. And I think if I'd been living in the West and just with my parents, I may have been medicated. I may have been put on stuff like
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
told, oh, you have an
Right.
overactive imagination, or oh, isn't that cute? Oh, she thinks that she's seeing or speaking to whoever or whatever. No, 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 not really. Here, have some meds. But so I
Right.
was so lucky to not have anything numbed out of me, that
Right.
I would this open flow was always there. So when we relocated for my dad's work from Bangkok, he was in hotels and they were developing one in Sydney. And so we moved to Sydney. I was really like, whoa, like I then felt, because it was Sydney, Australia in the early 80s was very cool. The sort of, yeah, I guess it was 1983, were
Right.
it was quiet
Was
compared to the
it?
bustle and bustle of Bangkok. It
Right.
felt
Right.
quiet.
That would make sense. Yes.
And I
Totally
was like,
different.
whoa, like it was a different energy. You could just tune in. I would tune into other things.
Right.
And but again, I wasn't sharing it with, I wasn't really telling anybody. I was just quietly having these experiences. And I went to a school that had an amazing library of esoteric books, and that as I got older, I would just check them out and just look at them all and be like, oh, wow. Like, so I always felt really connected, and I really trusted my intuition, and just knew it was real. I never even questioned that. I never had that self-doubt, that inner thought, am I crazy? Am I hearing something? Is that made up? Should
Right.
I believe this? Because I knew it always felt very loving. And then when I followed the guidance, everything worked out. And that shows you right there the trust. I
Mhm.
always knew, okay, if I listen to them and I follow the guidance, I'm going to be fine. Like, I'm going to make the right choice. And I noticed that if I didn't, and I just sort of pushed it away,
Right.
you know, I would then I would make the wrong choice, and I do that very quickly and go,
Right.
I knew it. I knew I should have listened. And or just ignore and then be shown in a really dramatic way.
Right, right, right. Well, usually the lesson in that as well, right? There's the opportunity and the lesson and learning that don't go against your intuition too, right? But
Mhm.
I wish more people would lean into this. I mean, you had a very big advantage because of all the things that you were exposed to. And I know for myself, because I live in Toronto, born and raised in Canada, so it was very difficult to fit into and listen to my intuition. But, there was always that element of like little things that pull me away so that I wouldn't be fully immersed in, society's conditionings, right? Which is so hard because when you're conditioned to operate a specific way, you don't change. There's no transformation. There's no opportunity to find your growth. Like you can feel stuck. And then that's where like the depression amps up, the anxiety amps up. So I know that you're really about transformation. So like, what would you tell someone who is stuck in these cycles, or how could you help someone understand what is radical transformation in general, and how could that also work with intuition so that they could kind of start listening to the subtleties a little bit more? What would you offer as advice?
Okay. So I'm just like, okay, where should I begin?
Yeah.
So, so first, the path to radical transformation is really taking a deep look at yourself. And that's not easy, right? Because we can say, well, where do I begin? And really we have to understand the truth of who we are before we can step into or down this path of radical transformation.
Right.
And so when I'm working with my clients, I always have them, we talk about what it is they want to work on. We establish an intention. The intention is super powerful and has to come from your heart. This is not a mind, this is not a thought. And spirit, what's really amazing about our spirit guides and our spirit guide team is they're there for our only our best and highest interests, and they come from a very high place of love. They only literally want the best and highest good for us, and I always say that. I begin that with all of my clients. And so when we state our intention, it comes from our heart space, we're immediately opening up this channel and connecting to that truth, and the guidance comes through when I channel the guidance, the information from their spirit team, then that all these things are revealed potentially to the person, and it's up to them. Like some people don't want to hear the truth, but
Right.
spirit doesn't sugarcoat, right?
That I completely agree with that.
There's no sugarcoating, there's no beating around the bush. They just say it how it is because it's
Mhm.
for your best and highest good. Sometimes I have to say mentally, are you sure you want me to say it like that? Like, is there
All
another
the time. I can relate to that,
way?
Tatiana. Like I come off so abrasive sometimes or so direct, and people are just like in shock. And I'm like, you have to remember, I'm just a messenger. This is what your guide wants, and it's going to come out very direct.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are just like, oh, okay, that was a little much. And I'm like,
Yeah. No,
but
it's
that's what
crazy.
they
And
want.
and
That's
they'll
what they
say to
want to
me, they
say.
can take it. They're like, they can
Yeah.
handle it. This person can
Yeah.
handle it. And if they don't not think that, they'll rephrase it, or
Mhm.
or sometimes I'll say, can we say it another way? So sometimes I'm then shown a
Oh, you're
vision
being
of,
polite
you
about
know,
it. I love that.
well, yeah, it's like, it's not sugarcoating, it's just, can we say it another
Yeah.
way?
Yeah.
Or can we present it in another way? And
Hmm.
so then I'll say, instead of it being a direct sentence, because when you channel, it's just coming through, right? It's like
100%.
boom,
Yeah.
boom, 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 boom. It's like
Yeah.
someone's was telling you the whole time. It's like having a music on or something, and that the lyric, the song, the
Exactly. Yeah.
lyrics. Yeah, it's just coming through you. And so I'll when I say, can you show it to me another way? They present an image, more of a vignette of a scene in that person's life when the event first took place. And when I say event, so another amazing thing about spirit is they're always keeping that person super safe. I'm never shown the trauma, whatever it is, whether it's any abuse of any kind, that
Okay.
is never shown to me. So I'm only shown a scene in their timeline of when that reverberation of energy settled in the body. and became the event that they're experiencing today,
Mhm.
as because they've gone through life, and decades later it's compounded, it's added on, it's now causing pain and stress, and
Right.
they've been ignoring it. They're taking maybe potentially medication, or they're going to see someone to just because their back or their hips or whatever's constantly in pain. They're carrying this pain. So coming back to the truth of who you are, like, we have to feel in our bodies first, but we've got to admit, where are we holding on to these non-truths that
Mhm.
are holding us back, right? And a lot of spiritual work holds us back, weirdly, with
Mhm.
spiritual bypassing. We talked about it when you were on.
Yes, yes, I was
Mhm.
going to bring that up. Spiritual
So,
bypassing. Yep.
yeah. And so because when we feel so good, right,
Right.
from
We want to stay
yoga,
there. We want to just
finally,
stay feeling good. We don't want to feel the other things.
that's right. And that's not actually what it's about. It's great to feel good because that's a taste of what's truly to come.
Oh, yes.
But you have to feel into where is this discomfort? What does it mean? And tune into
Hmm.
that and allow it to surface so that we can then really experience radical transformation. And that's when it starts to occur. So radical transformation is radically giving yourself permission to go, yes, I acknowledge this. Oh my God, I'm ready to step into that. And then boom, you
Yeah.
you awaken. You have this moment that just kind of bursts, and it's like things start shifting in your life. Things, whether they're people fall away from your life really quickly,
Yes.
or opportunities appear in your life, or suddenly, you're married, you're not happily married anymore. You're like, oh my God, I didn't even realize I was experiencing this until now. But
Right.
actually, I knew it. I knew it somewhere deep down, but just wasn't being honest with myself. Like, that happened
Mhm.
to me. I was like, oh my God, all these years of, telling myself this other story. And not that he was a bad person, but it's just like, I was like,
Right.
oh my God. And you just grow. So that is really what radical transformation is. And
Yeah, it's like an
Um,
expansiveness, an evolution in your spiritual development too. It's like this
yes.
ability to step into that expansiveness, which is
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
but
Because
I'm curious.
and you can't be afraid. Like, there's so much around that is
Yeah.
fear, the fear of the
Yes.
unknown. But what if? And that's when your mind comes in and goes, oh, what if? Oh, no, I
There's
can't.
I
always the
was
fear.
literally going to ask about that now. How do you help your clients navigate when the mental comes in? Because inevitably it's going to come in, right? Like that transformation is not a straight path. Like
Mhm.
you are sometimes going to take two steps back and maybe two steps forward, three steps back, or two steps forward, one step back. So how do you work with them when the mind comes in and the fears come in? Because that's we're human. It's inevitable, right?
For sure it is. Yeah. And thank you for asking that question, because you know what? It's not a fast path.
No.
When I'm saying describing radical transformation is, and then suddenly, in quotes, you burst open and you connect. Getting to that point takes work and
Yes.
time and commitment to your inner growth, right? Your inner world and yourself, right? And we live in a time where everybody wants now. Wait, I'm broken. Fix me today, please. In this
Mhm.
1 hour session that we're going to do,
Right.
we want to be
In one
done.
hour, just do everything within
Can
one
you just do
hour.
Reiki on me for an
Yeah.
hour?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
my
It's like,
favorite. Don't do
oh,
any work, just do Reiki.
yeah. So when I work with my clients and that comes up, because it absolutely does, they're through the 90-minute session. The support is so beautiful. They're guided through all of these things that are arising within them.
Mhm.
The communication is coming through. I'm speaking it for about the first halfway. Then the second part of the session, I channel light, and it comes through in a really beautiful way. It moves. The light, I can see in the body, the blocks and how they need to be shifted and moved, and then bringing new light in. And sometimes it becomes very shamanic in nature, in that the person is an active. You're very much an active participant
Yes.
in the session, where, especially if someone has to purge the energy out of their system
Hmm.
energetically, they have to be really active and moving things. And then we replace all of that with light. And then they're given a 41-day practice to do. A mantra comes through always that is exactly right for that person. I'm always like, I'm constantly impressed with, like, and there's so many mantras. And so from my teacher's tradition, so a lot of them people may be familiar with, because a lot of them are very sort of tantric as well.
Right.
Uh, Not just Om Namah Shivaya, but other deities, and then other things that are much more involved. Some are for deities, some are for other things. But they're always some like Aham Prema, which is I am divine love, or
Mhm.
Aham Brahmasmi, which is, can be translated into I'm oneness, consciousness, expanded consciousness, Brahma. And so they really come in, and I always do like 40 to 60-minute setup, tune in and meditate before the person comes on Zoom or over. And I really try to understand. I ask, may this be for the highest good of this, of whoever it is. And, thank you for the guidance. And I start to pick up the mantra then, but it's at the end. And I always say to them, it's really important that you do this practice. And sometimes they're given some other things too, but this is going to help support your growth and the things that are going to come up, the tough things that are going to come up. But
Right.
we've just done in a crazy amount of work in 90 minutes. You've experienced a bunch of shifts, not just received information, but energetically a lot of shifts have just happened. And so now over the next 41 days, it's really critical that you commit to yourself, because that is where the growth
Like the
comes.
tuning into that frequency consistently.
Continuing,
It's so easy to do the work and then fall back into your routine, day-to-day routine patterns and experiences. And then, oh, shoot, something came up. Now I got to go back to do the work. Whereas like the mantra keeps you accountable to stay within that tone and frequency so that you have the ability to navigate your experiences from that place versus from that place and the density that you operated before, which is like a really beautiful way of kind of like staying consistent in that type of behavior. I love that. I wanted to ask, what was your did you go through a phase of spiritual bypassing for yourself? Because I think like when I first started off on my journey, I recall there wasn't a point where I was like, oh yeah, this feels really good. I love this. Like, I want everybody to feel good. I want everybody to like stay in this good vibe and this good energy. And then, oh God, things like really came at me. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't work like that. And I'm now going to have to get really real with what I need to examine and look at my truth. Do you have like an example of something that you went through when it came to spiritual bypassing or?
Yeah. So this was about, I'm just gonna think the age of my children, because my son's 20 now and my daughter's 15. So they were little. So this was probably 10 or 11 years ago.
Mhm.
And I was doing quite a lot of Kundalini yoga at the time.
Okay, yeah.
And I really enjoyed going into the Kundalini classes because I already had a mantra-based practice. I already did other yoga. I had already been a devotee of Kashmir Shaivism for a long time. One of she wasn't a teacher, but she was a mentor, Sally Kempton, who passed away, well, in 2003, sorry, 2023. So I had been exposed to a lot of the things that Kundalini is yogi bhajan. That's a syncretic practice it's a blend of a bunch of different things, that he then marked it. But anyway, they were working for me because I knew I understood a lot of the things that were going on. So I would go 3 times a week to a Kundalini class, and it would make me feel so good. I was like going home, leaving and going, whoa, I feel so amazing, and and just whatever. And I realized, so at that, my father had a massive life-altering stroke. I had left him, completely disabled with 6 words, and he never fully recovered. And he had to, it required high-level care, and his situation. So I had been experiencing that, trying to deal emotionally with all the things that were going on. We had moved a lot for my husband's work, countries, and the children had been little, and so there was a lot I was holding, and I was just kind of pushing things down, and unbeknownst to me, I had already been pushing things down that I didn't even think about, and so I was literally like just having these experiences that were coming up in my physical body that would stop me. I was in so much physical pain. There was a moment where I had this my back just locked up, my whole back of my God, it honestly felt like I was a voodoo doll. Someone had a voodoo doll of me and was grabbing my
Who
back.
has my voodoo doll?
Yeah, and it was
Give it a massage.
yeah, because you couldn't see it, right? Like there was no visible pain, but it was unbelievable. It was so excruciating. I had a friend who was an energy worker, and I would go to see him, and I would literally text her going, oh my God, this pain is back, and it's even worse. I can't even move. I woke up one morning and I couldn't get out of bed, and I had to slide my body into a way, like my hips off the side of my bed and then to be able to pull myself up. It was so painful. And I had to, get my kids ready for school and stuff. And then drive them. It was so unbearable. And she was always had like a 3-month wait list for people. And I texted her, and this morning she's like, "Oh my God, someone just canceled like 2 minutes ago. Yes, come now." And she then worked on my body, and she was like, "Wow, you have all this stored stuff that's coming up that needs to just come out of you, that you haven't been processing, hadn't been integrating." So this is the key to
Yes.
spiritual practice,
Integration.
right?
Yes. Talk
Like,
about that a lot.
so
Yes.
yeah, so if we are doing all this work and we're feeling on this high, but we're not actually integrating those practices into the body, I feel like that's, this was my experience with Kundalini yoga.
Yes.
Anyway, maybe other people have had it, I don't know, but there's no integration, right? So you're doing all this work, all these mantras, all this stuff, like all the kriyas and all that, and they're quite intense, and if some holding a pose for 11 minutes or whatever, and then you leave, and I would be like, "Yeah, wow, I do this work, I feel amazing. Oh, my abs feel great."
Yeah. The abs.
Yeah.
My abs look great. They feel awful.
Well,
But and then but yeah, I was just not there was no integration time. I wasn't like feeling like, okay, I've just done all this nervous system work.
Yes.
In my nervous system, is there something that I'm feeling that actually might need to come up? And so it was just being pushed down, and then I had this massive physical experience that no one could see, but it was really intense. And so that forced me to feel into it all, try to understand what it was connected. And I say who, like my parents, like when I was young,
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
whatever, my childhood trauma, or all of that sort of stuff. What emotionally was that locked into that I had just put down? And as I started to give myself permission to face that truth, those aspects of myself, they dissolved. They just naturally dissolved and came up to the surface. I could feel them in my heart, and I was able to go, "Oh my God, that's it. Oh my God, oh my God, that's why I behave that way. Like,
Right.
oh my God, how did I not know this? Oh my God." And I had all these epiphanies that just kept coming up.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was that was amazing. And I probably did that for 2 years. It wasn't like, again, like
Yeah, no, it's not. It's
transformation's
not. It's like
yeah.
years worth of stuff
Yeah.
that has been locked in within your body and in within your nervous system, which kind of makes me go into as well. Like a lot of people are doing like somatic therapy. I think it's beautiful. I love breath work. It's so great, but you have to do the integrative work as well. You have to be able to fuse both parts. It's the same thing with Reiki. It's the same thing with any other energy modality. I feel like you can't just do the one thing. You have to integrate it. And then also what that would radically change within your life and in your experiences to make those transformations actually stick, happen, spiritually evolve within that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because I feel like people get stuck. I see this especially when I go to Bali. I actually haven't, I feel like, and we talked about this, I feel like my frequency lately, I'm just getting so turned off by certain aspects of it, because I think people go there and they do the mantras and they do the yoga and they do the meditation, and then that's it. And I'm so glad that you talked about integration, well, both of you, because I was going to actually ask that question about what that means for you. And then you mentioned, it's feeling your feelings. Because I think personally, I've had back pain. I have scoliosis. I've had low back pain my whole life. And then I would see a chiropractor, an osteopath, a massage therapist, a this, a that, a physio, athletic therapist for probably like 16, 17 years. And then I remember telling you last year when we started doing more of that,
integrative
more
work,
of that work, we're like really tapping into the feelings and
well,
low back
ready
pain
for it too. I think that there's a level of being ready for it as well. I think like to face that that layer is also important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because like maybe even though you thought you weren't doing something for 15 years, you were doing other things for 15 years.
Right.
And now there's an aspect of you that's ready to face that specific pain.
And the feelings associated, because low back pain is lack of support. About all of that.
But now you're going through something really interesting right now with your nervous system. So her nervous system is like really cool right now. It's doing this thing where like it doesn't want to be in.
I just cried. Like before we got on, I showed up at her house and I was like crying.
And I was like, this is great. It means that you're building your immunity to certain things that aren't going to trigger you and dysregulate you like they normally would. This is a good thing. I'm glad you're sad. I'm glad you're crying. You're feeling your feelings, which is like the most important thing when it comes to doing this type of integrative work.
Yes.
Well, Tatyanna, if you could leave a little nugget for our audience or anything when it comes to transformation or shadow work or anything that you feel that our audience would benefit from, please do so. And then just to let everybody know, we're going to have Tatyanna's information linked so you can contact her, follow her on socials. So Tatyana, what would you kind of, I don't know, any little insight or wisdom?
No, I always feel like the biggest thing is like strengthen your intuition. And
Yes,
how do you do that? It's really listen to those moments. Observe when you're in the shower. You don't have to be meditating or, be a, person who channels spiritual guidance. We're all spiritual beings. We all have the ability to tap in to our spirit guides. We've just forgotten how because we live
right.
in this modern time where we're conditioned to believe that's just not the way. So feeling it when you're walking your dog or just like, listening to music or going for, even if you live in a city and you're walking around the block, I feel like the shower is the number one place
It
for
is, isn't
most
it? It's
people.
always the
Yeah, yeah,
funniest place. I'm always like
yes.
getting psychic insights,
In the
downloads in the
shower all the
Because
time.
of the water, right? The
Yes,
water, like
yeah,
negative
yeah,
ions, right? They're like
yeah.
floating around, and so we're kind of open because we're in this moment where we're washing our body or our hair or whatever,
Hmm.
right? And being bathed by water. And I
Yes.
say to my clients, like, imagine that like it's a beautiful purple waterfall of light that's coming over you and
Hmm.
bathing, and just close your eyes and feel that. And then listen to any messaging that might come through. And it might be as simple
Hmm.
as, oh, call that person.
Right.
Remember, oh, there's that. Like we all have phones now, write people's numbers down. But sometimes someone writes something down on a piece of paper, you put it in your pocket, and you forget.
Hmm.
And it's like, where's that number? So I'm like, listen to the tiniest things because
Hmm.
that's your spirit guide team reminding you to call like do that thing,
Exactly.
whatever it is. And so don't discard the small things because the small things lead to bigger things and they're
I
really
agree.
important. So that is
Yes.
my number one tip for tuning into your intuition
I
and,
love that.
trusting your
That's so
spirit guide.
true. Tatiana, I want to thank you so much for coming on to the Soul Thrive podcast. This was a beautiful conversation. You're a beautiful soul. And honestly, I love your energy so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you for coming
That's
on. I
so, thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you.